All right, excellent. Welcome, Myriam. We'll go ahead and introduce you. It's my pleasure to introduce Myriam Bouaziz. She is the Director of the Office of Tax Appeals. Myriam was appointed Director for the Office of Tax Appeals in September of 2024. She was previously appointed by Governor Newsom as Chief Deputy Director for the Office of Tax Appeals in December 2020. Prior to that appointment, she served as the Deputy Director of Legislation at the Office of Tax Appeals. Myriam was a consultant for the Office of the California State Senate President Pro Tem Kevin De León and the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, a senior legislative assistant in the Office of California State Assemblymember Roger Dickinson, and a programmatic access specialist at the San Francisco Mayor's Office on Disability. She earned a political science BA from the University of California, Los Angeles, and a JD from the University of California, Hastings College of Law. So you are the third in line as somebody that has their law degree. Welcome, Myriam. Appreciate you being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for the leadership this committee provides on statewide disability access. Also, opportunity and equity, I think, are involved in that. I really appreciate the chance to be part of this conversation. And as you mentioned in my bio, I want to share that this work is also personal to me. Earlier in my career, I worked at the San Francisco Mayor's Office on Disability, and that experience continues how I shape how I think about accessibility, inclusion, and public service. Californians with disabilities are an essential part of our communities and our workforce, contributing across every sector of the economy, including state service. In public service especially, employees with disabilities bring lived experiences, perspectives, and that strengthen our decision-making, improve accessibility, and help government better serve all Californians. I've firsthand seen that when we remove barriers and prioritize inclusion, our organizations become stronger, more innovative, and more effective. Specifically at the Office of Tax Appeals, fair and impartial tax adjudication depends on a workforce that reflects the diversity of the taxpayers that we serve. For us, inclusion isn't aspirational, it's fundamental to our organization, influencing how we support our employees and how we deliver public service every day to taxpayers. Disability inclusion is really about removing barriers. And at the Office of Tax Appeals, we encourage inclusive recruitments and equitable hiring practices. I ask our managers to think broadly about talent and to engage meaningfully in the interactive process. Providing reasonable accommodations isn't just a requirement, it's a responsibility and a core part of equity. Personally, equity means more than simply having access to a job. It means having access to meaningful careers, opportunities to grow, to lead, and to have a voice. Because at the center for employees at the state level, we want to help everyone grow in their career. We also have to go beyond our internal workforce because it's central how we serve taxpayers every day. We go out of our way to ensure that taxpayers with disabilities can fully and meaningfully participate in our hearings process. This includes offering individualized technology run-throughs in advance of hearings so participants are comfortable with the platform and know what to expect. We also make any requested reasonable accommodations tailored to that individual, whether that involves technology, communication, scheduling, or the hearing format itself. We'll adjust that. We also have an ombudsperson, and because we're so small, we are a very tiny agency. We're a little over 100 people across the state of California. Our ombudsperson is able to actually speak to everyone who calls in. So either you get a live person when you call or you get a call back within 24 hours generally. We want to create an environment where people feel comfortable and safe disclosing a disability. I've actually found that that's the biggest barrier, that we have many more people with a range of disabilities who work and interact with the Office of Tax Appeals, but they don't disclose that and ask for those accommodations. So we want to ensure that people feel supported and not judged. When individuals feel safe coming forward, we can provide what they need to succeed. And just as importantly, it helps reinforce a broader truth that a disability is not limiting in any way. With the right support, people thrive and others see that inclusion benefits everyone. Our Disability Advisory Committee and those at all state agencies play an important role in helping the departments identify barriers and implement practical improvements, especially as it is specialized to that department and the needs that that department may have. Their work improves accessibility, normalizes conversation about disability, which I think is very important, and strengthens organizational culture. Education around accommodations and inclusive practices benefits staff, leadership, and the public we serve. So we try to have ongoing education and dialogue, so people know how much inclusion really matters. It also then comes down to empathy, flexibility, creativity in finding solutions, and thoughtful communication. Those efforts directly support everyone's morale, retention, and make public service jobs more attractive to those in the public. A strong organization doesn't just reflect diversity, it learns from it. So it isn't something I just check off a list. It's a continuous journey that requires attention and accountability. For me, leadership is about service and creating the conditions where others can reach their full potential. So we want to meet everyone where they are so they can grow in their career at the Office of Tax Appeal. I personally remain deeply committed to building a California where every individual, regardless of their disability, has the opportunity to contribute, succeed, and belong. So thank you again for your leadership, your partnership, and including me in this very important conversation. I'd be really happy to take any questions anyone has.
Thank you, Myriam.
Thank you.
Good presentation. I'm looking right now to see if there's anybody in the chat that has any questions. Not seeing any at the moment.
Well, then that case, I'm just going to pose my question, and then we're going to go to Carrie. She got her hand up, but I guess I beat her to it. So, Director, could you tell me, I'm a little curious, what steps is the Office of Tax Appeal taking to ensure equitable access to tax appeal process for everyone, including person with disabilities?
So as I've mentioned, we will do a personalized technology run through for every taxpayer that requests it. For those that want to have either a virtual hearing or an oral hearing. So even if you're coming in person, we do pre-hearing conferences for every case, and those are done generally by video. And so we'll make accommodations. We have a call-in phone number if the person either doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't have the technological ability to sign on virtually. We also, obviously in person, we will make any necessary physical accommodations that anyone needs. Or if they'd like to have a visual aid, we make that available to them and we'll work with the taxpayer. We also have the option that if you would like to just submit everything in writing, either by mail or electronically, you can have your decision made on the writing. So we allow the taxpayers to really steer their appeal at the Office of Tax Appeals, and we even customize the briefing timeline. So if an individual needs more time to get their evidence in or their argument in, we work with that taxpayer to ensure that they have the time they need to make an effective argument when they come before the Office of Tax Appeals.
Great. Thank you so much. Carrie, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Hi, good morning. And you were speaking about making state jobs more attractive. And I know this is part of a larger conversation and beyond the scope of your role specifically, but I kind of want to ask you and maybe everyone on the call about the issue of part-time work. This seems less and less available throughout the state in every department. But it does come up in RE discussions from time to time where individuals feel like they can work, but they can't work full time, whether it's due to a disability or even just single parents who need a little bit more time to attend to their duties at home. And I'm just kind of wanted to open that conversation about why don't we have more part-time positions? Is this something that you do in your department offer people? And can we open that conversation at an interdepartmental level to think about the benefits of that for people with disabilities and students and single parents and all kinds of people who might be more willing to participate in state employment if there were more flexible options?
I think that comes from the statewide level, from a culture of when you go to the Department of Finance and ask for BCPs to get positions, you're always asking for full-time positions generally. That's the funding you're trying to get as a department. But I know that at the Office of Tax Appeals, our administrative unit, we have wonderful people in our HR administration that are very flexible with employees, and those that have been struggling with their full-time employment schedule, they have been offered part-time employment. So that is something that we have offered as an accommodation to individuals, or we've also done flexibility, obviously, when someone has had an illness or someone has, so we're very small, and so we're more than willing to accommodate if someone needs that. But yes, I think we can do more to actually advertise it at that, because it can be daunting if you only have the ability or the time to do a part-time job. And you see all of these full-time jobs, you may not apply, so we may be getting less applicants. So I think that's wonderful, and I think that's something that would be great to bring to Nick at the secretary level, to have a discussion with all of the, especially Cal HRs in his portfolio, to talk about that.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to throw it out there since there are people here from Cal HR, and maybe I should have mentioned it while Nick was still here. I got his email address out of the chat, so maybe that gets a conversation that can get started. Thank you.
Wonderful. But we've definitely offered it as an accommodation for people when they've needed it at the Office of Tax Appeals. And
open to anyone who wants to put anything in the chat about what their department does. I would love to hear that as well. Thank you for the time and opportunity to ask a question. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for asking.
No, that was a good question. Thank you, Carrie. And just to throw it out there as well, in the agency that I work in, I've rarely seen anything less than a full-time position available. And someone I know was one of those 2 people out of the whole agency that had the 50% position. And I think after they departed the agency, it was transformed back into a full-time position. And I agree. I think it could open doors for people with disabilities and other needs to obtain employment with the state. And as I believe Nick mentioned, the state is not looking to do favors for anybody, but by hiring them, the state is looking to hire the best, the brightest to do the job. And if that kind of flexibility helps people with disabilities obtain the job and they're the best fit for the position, then I think the doors should be opened for such things. And I know that we're not here to hatch that out, obviously, right now, but just putting it out there is all. And I appreciate that discussion. I did notice, Nance, that in the chat that there was questions about the parity rate. And so do you know what OTA's parity rate is right now?
I do. It is 12.7%.
12.7. And is that has that been generally steady state, or has it been going up or down? Do you know?
I did not get the historical numbers as prep, and I can get that back to you. But I do think, I know as someone who knows a lot of the reasonable accommodations we've granted, I think it's very important that we, as I stated, make people feel comfortable sharing their disability with the state, because I know that that percentage is inaccurate, but that has to do with the cultural of some people. I mean, I know people on our executive team who've stated they haven't shared with the state their disability, and they have, so.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment as well. I think a lot of agencies have higher percentages, but it's the culture that tends to lead to staff disclosing or not disclosing. And I'm not putting blame anywhere. I'm just stating that it's a culture thing, and it can impact disclosure very definitely. And on the topic of parity, and I think you mentioned the Disability Advisory Committee. Have you had time with your DAC? And if so, do you know of any like standout recommendations that you could think of that they've brought up as far as issues are concerned?
They haven't had any recommendations that they've brought to me or issues, but actually they did an amazing event where people, and they partnered with our DEI committee, and people shared their very personal stories in an intimate way in a small group with everyone. And I think that it was amazing, because it made people feel more comfortable and also feel like they had community, and that other people were going through the same things that they were, whether it be on the DEI front or the disability front. And I think that because we're so small, that I want to encourage in the next year having more small, intimate groups like that, where people can be really honest and reflective with each other, because I think it gives people a sense of community and they don't feel alone in whatever struggle they may have, whether it be as a woman in the workplace, as a person of color in the workplace, or having certain disabilities, I think it makes people feel a lot more comfortable and feel like they're on a team and in it together. So I also am creating a formalized plan of how to get feedback from all of our committees at the Office of Tax Appeals on a quarterly basis, and touch base. But I'm really lucky. I know every employee that works at the Office of Tax Appeals because it is so small and can see them in the hallway and connect with them. So I think it's very different than when you run a large department and you don't necessarily know everyone's name that you work with. I see the chairs of our committees in the hallway and chat with them. And so it's a lot more also an informal exchange of information.
About how large is your agency?
We're a little bit over 100. I think we currently have 116
Oh wow, that is
positions. Yes.
many. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
wondering
Yes.
how
So
everybody.
I definitely, yes. So it
Uh,
is a huge advantage in many ways.
I just have a clarifying question relating to what you just mentioned that, the DAC, Disability Advisory Committee, did some meaningful work with the DEIA committee. And so how many committees do you have? And is DAC like one of many committees part of your organization?
Yes, we have many committees at the Office of Tax Appeals.
Uh-huh.
Of course, you can have my email. I saw that come up in the chat. I can post it in the chat. Um, we have many committees. A lot of them have to do more so with work. So we're
Mhm.
very collaborative because we are so small. And so employees
Mhm.
have a direct voice from everything of what our website's going to look like to what amendments we should make to our regulations. So um, we have a committee for almost everything here because people can have a voice in structuring the Office of Tax Appeals and how it makes changes and moves forward.
So these committees, some of them are just committees to facilitate the business operation,
Mm-hmm.
your organization, I assume stakeholders group and so forth and
Mm-hmm.
so on. And then there are committees that are internal, more towards like employee facing committees, like the DIA committee that you mentioned, right?
Yes, but they're also external. So they'll give us
Okay.
suggestions on how we can make our website more accessible or hearings
Mhm.
more accessible for all
Mhm.
individuals. We also have a language access committee.
Mhm.
And so they help to make suggestions on how we use our translating services or when we have
Mhm.
interpreters come or how to make our website accessible in
Right.
different languages. So I think that because we're small, they actually get to have influence on how our operations run. So they're kind of all intertwined and we want to have
Right.
representation so that as we do our operations items, it's also influenced by our DAC or DEI or language access.
Are any of these committees are mandated under government code?
No,
No.
except for the DAC.
Okay, so the DAC is the only committee that's mandated under the
Yes.
government code. Okay. The reason I asked the follow-up question is, again, DAC can only be effective, and we advocate for DAC. So you have to understand where we are coming from.
Yes.
In order for DAC to be an effective body, they must advise the chief of the agency, the leadership, which is you. And if they're not doing that for whatever reason, they're not being effective DAC. And that's the reason why I know you mentioned they worked with the DEIA committee, did some work, but they haven't really met with you directly. Is that something that because of the operational needs you couldn't do or you planned to do, but it just never got around to doing it?
We have a member of our management, our EEO officer is on our DAC committee for not voting purposes, but observational
Yeah.
purposes. And we
Okay.
check in. I go over all of the agendas prior to the meetings. And like I said, our chair of DAC, I talk to
Okay.
very frequently because we're very small. So it's
Ah,
more of a lot of things here are more informal just due to our nature of being small. But that's why I wanted to put in a formal
right.
structure in the coming year with all
Great.
of the committees because we have so many to have a
Right.
feedback loop. So
That's great. My other question is, how has your background, you mentioned you worked at the mayor's office in this San Francisco mayor's office in disability awareness. How has your background in disability access influenced your leadership at OTA? to that lens of your experience?
I think gaining extensive experience with invisible disabilities, that I think people going through their day-to-day lives, if they don't know someone who has an invisible disability, the barriers that they face, because it looks from the outside that there is nothing impeding them from advancing, whether it be in their career or engaging with the state or our department, for example, with the Office of Tax Appeals, and having a deep knowledge of the range of individual disabilities, as I assured people. So my specific job was that when um, someone in San Francisco had an issue accessing a program that was run by the city, I would resolve that issue and see if that department was violating the law in any way. And so my job was to work with that individual and find a resolution and get that department to ensure that their programs were accessible to everyone.
That's great. Much like what
Yes.
you do now with within your own employee and
Yes.
organization that you represent.
And so I dealt with a range of individuals with a range of disabilities and a range of programmatic access issues, right? It could be anything from an individual who'd been arrested, and I'd work with the SFPD, to someone who didn't have access to a community center that they wanted to get into. And so I got to learn very quickly about how, on a global front, we can make things accessible in such a diverse universe of physical limitations, mental health issues, and temporary disabilities, right? This is a temporary issue, and how do we accommodate that? So it's just such a diverse community, and I think people don't realize that, right? There's only a couple of reference points that they have, and they don't realize that it's such a diverse, far-reaching, and so there's a lot you can do and should do to make sure things are accessible.
World is bigger than what we know, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you so much.
In the audience, one of the audience members asked, how many people serve on your DAC?
We have a joint DAC with another department because, again, we are very small. And so let me try to pull up.
And if you don't have an answer, you don't have to, you can provide that later. We don't
I will
put
do
you on
that.
the spot.
I don't want to misspeak. Yes.
Yeah.
But we've joined with another department in our building, because actually when you're smaller, you don't want to have a committee that is too small, right? And it's an echo chamber of a couple of voices. So we did partner with another small department.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I look forward to the answer. I do have a comment, though, for myself, because you mentioned about the invisible disabilities. So I appreciate that you do have that experience and are knowledgeable about invisible disabilities itself. As an example, without disclosing names or agencies, I've communicated with somebody about a request they put in, real world example, because they are distracted by persons walking by their desk. And so they just had a simple request to put a wall up to stop the visual distraction. And so they were told by their management, well, you can just ignore them, that kind of a response, or you can just walk around if you need to do something, not realizing that the person, it's not a physical disability, it's an invisible disability. And so I find that there are people that are not knowledgeable about disabilities that tend to focus on what they can see rather than what they can't. And so they make judgment calls based off of not seeing that somebody can't mentally process things in the way that they can. And I appreciate they had that experience.
And because the people I work with are so amazing, I already have an answer for you guys. Our DAC has 9 members, including those from our partner agencies in our building.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that was a quick response. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions. Are there any other questions from the audience or from the chat that we can ask the director before we say goodbye to her?
Someone asked if you know of any job openings in the agency because they think your agency sounds like it's a great place to work at.
We do have one currently open. It's for an attorney 1 position, and I believe we may have a couple more in our legal division upcoming.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I don't have any further questions, and I don't see any further questions from the audience. Bobby?
Oh, attorney one, that would also have a LEAP examination comparable.
Yes.
Right? Good.
Yes, and
Good.
we've hired individuals from the LEAP list,
Hmm.
and we also certify the list for all LEAP classifications we advertise for. So it is something that we've successfully done at multiple levels. We have, yeah.
Thank you so much.
No,
You're
thank you
great.
so much for having me. Thanks for reaching out.
Thank you. Come back
Bye.
and see us soon and happy holidays.
Yes, enjoy the rest of your meeting. Happy holidays. Thank you. And Happy
Thank
New Year.
you. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Bye bye.